You got it? Let me put this on the vine. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Amir Moore, and today I'm interviewing Mr. Highsmith, and he's going to tell us some of his insight on his life in the 80s. You were a teen in high school during the 80s, correct?
Yeah, in the early 80s, yes.
Early 80s. And would you mind telling us some of the most memorable moments?
Well, one of my most memorable moments was graduating from high school. That was a great experience because at that time, because I live in New Haven, so you went to school in your neighborhood. There weren't any magnet schools, so wherever you lived, that's pretty much where you went to school. So I grew up with all the kids that I went to school with, all in our immediate neighborhood. So we had a chance to all grow up together and graduate from high school together, so it was a great memory.
And so you would say that you would play outside with your friends more than you
All the time. I never want to be inside. It was like a punishment. When we were getting punished, we had to stay inside and not go outside. Today, punishment is go outside. You don't get to stay inside.
Yeah.
Because everything we needed other people. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't text. So you had to go outside and communicate with real live human beings, which is what we did.
Now I know computers were in the 80s, but they weren't.
Not in the house. Nobody had them at home. Yeah. And they were this big, they were like this big as that, right there. And they were just huge things. And nobody really had them at home. There was no laptop. We didn't even have a microwave at that time. So if you wanted to warm up something, you had to turn the whole oven on just to warm something up. You guys got it made. You don't even realize it.
And do you kind of remember some of the fashion, like your favorite?
I certainly do remember the fashion. Well, Adidas were, shell-toed Adidas. Jeans like Lee's, Levi's, Devils, Sassoon, Jordache. The stuff that people don't wear anymore. It was the hottest stuff. Like, trust me when I tell you, it was just like hot. And Pumas were out. Fila was hot. Nike was all right, but Nike wasn't a big deal. Like now, Nike's got it all on lock, but it was pretty much like Adidas, Puma, Nike, some still Pro Keds and Converse a little bit. In terms of clothes, people were just wearing jeans for the most part. And colors were big. At one time, there was this, and don't ask me why this was a fad, but it was a sweatshirt that just said Coca-Cola on it. And that was the biggest thing. And they were crazy expensive, and like really only Macy's had them. But it was like a white sweatshirt, and it had a blue block in it with white letters with Coca-Cola, and it was just a craze for some reason that to this day I do not understand.
Only the cool kids wore.
Yeah, like me.
Yeah.
I'm a cool kid. Would wear them. Yeah. So it was that, and people just kind of all dressed the same. Today I see a lot of variety in how kids dress, but at that time we were all like dressing the same.
And did you have like a favorite musician or band?
Well, in the early 80s is when rap music really started to take off. Like now, you grew up with rap music and you hear it all the time. But when I was younger, at that age, you didn't hear it a lot on the radio at all. They hardly played rap music on the radio. And MTV was out at the time, I believe, but they never played a rap video. Because rappers weren't making a lot of money, so they weren't doing big videos. They were just kind of, you would go to parties and people would rap and you'd go to different concerts, but nobody really had a lot of records. But then in around 83, it really started to get bigger and bigger. So that was the music scene at the time. And everybody was rapping and everybody was into it because it was brand new. You can't even imagine that because you've grown up with it. But in the 80s, it was new to a lot of people. So.
And did you have a favorite sport that you?
Basketball. Yeah, because we were always kicked out of our houses to go outside and play. Mm-hmm. You learn to play all the sports. You get tired of just playing basketball, so then you play football, and you play baseball, and then you throw a frisbee. So we were doing everything we could possibly do to entertain ourselves outside the house, but basketball was probably, because basketball was cheap. You could just have a ball and go to a court. There are times when we didn't even have a court. So what we would do is take a milk crate and cut out the bottom of the milk crate and tack it up to like an abandoned house, and that would be the basket, and we'd have the ball, and that's how we'd play.
And did you have like a famous player that was like your favorite basketball player?
Well, probably Dr. J. Julius Erving was probably everybody's favorite. Even if you didn't like his team, you liked him. And then later on, obviously, became Michael Jordan, and now it's LeBron James.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works.
And would you say overall you like the 80s? Like, would you go back?
In a minute, I go back to the 80s. It was simpler times. There was no tweeting, no texting, no cell phones, no social media. Life was simpler, and it was much, much less violent at that in the early 80s. It became much more violent, sort of mid 80s to late 80s. But the early 80s, I could go anywhere, and I still live in New Haven. I could go anywhere. And as a teenager, not worry about whether people knew I was from this side of town or that side of town. It didn't matter. It genuinely didn't matter to people. So I would go back because that was great. That was an awesome time.
Well, thank you for
All right.
interviewing.
My pleasure. Anytime. Nice shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
All right.